Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this afternoon's session. We are joined with Neil Thompson, who's going to be talking us through how to stream with the Z90 and the NX80 simply. Neil, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Hello, Jake. Thanks for inviting me along. I'm all raring to go here. Hello, Cleveland. Are we all right out there?
I think we are live. I think we are good to go, mate. So yeah, any questions throughout the seminar, just let us know in the YouTube chat or in Discord, and I'll feed them into Neil so he can answer them when he sees them or when he sees fit.
Thanks a lot, Jake.
Cool, thank you.
Right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming along. I'm Neil Thompson. I used to work for Sony for many years, and before that, I started my career with the BBC at Ealing Film Studios, which kind of is a bit of a giveaway that I'm too old for this nonsense. All this IT stuff, blimey, I'm way out of my comfort zone here. So we're going to try and blunder along through the world of streaming. I'll put myself up on the screen so you can say hello. Afternoon, all. We're going to have a look at streaming with a couple of Sony camcorders, and if you're some kind of streaming ninja, to be honest, maybe you're not in the right place, because today is designed really for people, camera operators who've been using maybe Sony camcorders for a while and thought, oh yeah, there's a whole menu there about network settings. I wonder what that does. And well, for those of you like that, well, you are most certainly in the right place, hopefully. So we'll together have a look at what all this network settings are about, and try and get set up for some streaming onto that YouTube business. So let's get started then. I shall put myself with a bit of luck in picture. God, can you see this? I'm lighting engineer, cameras, vision engineer, the whole lot today. Right, so streaming with Sony camcorders and that sort of thing. The Z90 and the NX80 are two Sony camcorders that will allow you to stream your material directly to YouTube or to Facebook Live or various other platforms. And we're starting to see this capability creeping onto more cameras, but these are the two we'll mainly look at. I'll diverge off into commenting on some of the other cameras as we go through, but these will be the kind of the main stars of the show, as it were. And these are both Handycam style camcorders based around a 1-inch Exmor RS sensor. That 1-inch sensor's been in quite a few cameras actually. It's in the X70 before the Z90, the predecessor, and very similar sensor goes into the RX100 and the RX10 stills cameras, which are fantastic little cameras. So there's a really top sort of sensor. I quite like this 1-inch sensor format, and I've summarized the whole situation here, I think, quite neatly by saying they're really good. I could perhaps go into more detail, but I think that'll suffice for now. So those are the cameras we're looking at. The difference between the two of them, they look very much similar. The Z90 has a few extra star features, such as its 4K capability, its 3G SDI output connector, the ability to wrap its files in an MXF format rather than in an MP4 format, and a few minor differences, but they're very similar kind of machines, apart from those sort of core differences. And there's a Z90 here on my left here, which will help us through the day with a bit of luck, as long as none of the wires fall out or the power disappears or the network crashes. What could possibly go wrong? So let's go back to basics for a minute, if you don't mind. And if we have a camcorder with some kind of network capability, obviously we need some way of physically connecting it to the net, to the World Wide Web. And that might be as simple as an Ethernet connector on the back of your camera, and you plug it into an Ethernet connector on the back of your router, and Bob's your uncle. That's kind of as simple as it sort of gets, really. There's alternative ways of connecting though, and a lot of camcorders these days have a Wi-Fi transmitter built into the camera. So cameras like the Z90, the Z280, the FX9 and others all have the Wi-Fi transmitter built inside the camcorder. I don't know if there's any FS7 or F5 users out there, or F55 users, but I don't know if you remember, but you were supplied with a little USB dongle that came in the bottom of the packaging when you bought the camera. Most people thought, I wonder what that is, and threw it out. But that was actually the little Wi-Fi transmitter dongle, which was okay, but it wasn't built into the camera and didn't have terrific range. Things have got better since then, and as I say, the Z90 and the NX camera incorporate that capability inside the body of the camera. I'll just put myself back in there. Other cameras have Wi-Fi dongles. So there's a good old-fashioned shoulder camcorder called the X400 where you would plug a USB connector with the dongle in, which gives you a bit more flexibility in terms of range, and you can put more powerful and transmitters in and update them as more technology comes along. And the final way of connecting is being able to just plug an LTE phone dongle straight into a USB connector on your camera. So, for instance, the FX9 camcorder, which we see here. Oh, there's one we prepared earlier. How exciting. The FX9 camcorder will allow you to attach an adapter onto the back of the camcorder that has a couple of USB connectors on it, and that will then connect to LTE phone dongles and give you a way of accessing the World Wide Web through 3G, not so good, 4G, good, 5G in future iterations as it comes along. So there's different ways of physically connecting your camera to the World Wide Web and then the external networks. So just looking at the Z90, for instance, we have various connectors on it. We have a good old-fashioned SDI BNC connector on the back, and that's always nice to see, and an HDMI connector. But as I'll mention a little later on, they're not really suitable for network connections, streaming connections. They're fine for plugging into a monitor, and that's what they're designed for. They're not really in the right format, the right protocol for connecting to the World Wide Web. What we need is something like the Wi-Fi connector, or perhaps a wired Ethernet connection. And if I just remove myself from the picture there, you can see that it is actually possible to connect the Z90 via an Ethernet connection if you want to have a solid, secure, non-interfered with sort of connection that isn't going to drop out for a... So if you're doing the Queen's speech on a Z90, it could happen, and streaming it to the world, then you'd probably not want to use Wi-Fi. You'd want something that maybe was pretty solid and give you a consistently good network connection. And in order to do that, there's a little dongle that you have to buy from Sony called a VMC UAM2, nattily titled, which then allows you to connect to an RJ45 connection. Those are the two connection modes on the Z90. Wi-Fi, or via a little adapter you can get through to an RJ45 connection and just plug into your router if you've got one. Convenient. Okay. So what can we do with this connection once we've made it? Once we've plugged in and established a connection? There are 4 basic things you can do with Sony camcorders via the network menu. And they are as follows. You can control the camera. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Sony have an application on that you can download onto your smart device called Content Browser Mobile, CBM, Content Browser Mobile. And believe it or not, it's free. I don't know what's gone wrong. Sony have slipped up here. This is not the normal Sony way. I don't know what they were thinking. But it's free, and it allows you to control various cameras. quite a lot of cameras in the range now can be controlled from Content Browser Mobile, and it's quite a good little application. I would demonstrate it to you, but for reasons I'll show when we go into the camera menus, it's perhaps not the time or the place just at the moment. The second thing we can do is what we're here today to talk about mainly, which is to stream our images and our audio from the camera, the output of the camera, to another location. And that's probably for the Z90 the most important function. Maybe an equally important function, but I don't know, it's difficult to say. It depends on your applications and whether you're working for a news corporation or something like that. The transfer of files. So you're still sending your images, if you like, but you're sending them as a file rather than as a live stream. And they're two very different ways of getting your images from one place to another. Transferring a file is, well, it's exactly as you might do. Imagine you take it off a card and drag and drop it onto a desktop or something like that. And all the data that was recorded onto the media card, whatever it may be, gets moved into a different location. The other thing you can do is you can transfer metadata, you can send people clip naming protocols and things like that, but we won't worry about that for today. So there's lots of different things we can do with our connection once we've achieved it. One thing I ought to perhaps talk about just for a moment to get things in context. If we make a connection, a vitally important thing is how fast is that connection, how much data is going up and down that connection, and that to a degree will limit what you're able to do with your connection. If you think about recording onto something like the Z90 or many other different camcorders, your recording rates, depending on what codec you use and what frame rate and what resolution, might be somewhere 25, 50 or 100 megabits per second, depending on what flavor you're recording. So that's quite a lot of data. Even the proxy images are like 6 or 9 megabits per second typically. So the full resolution file data is going onto the cards at quite a speed. If we look at typical connection speeds that we might achieve in the real world, and this is very, very much subject to debate, and your mileage will most definitely vary. There's nothing fixed about these, but I just pulled some figures out of the air really to give us a bit of context. So if we have a 3G connection via our mobile phone or via our Wi-Fi connection or something, we have a download speed maybe 5 megabits per second, upload speed 1 megabit per second, not very much. 4G, download 12, maybe upload 10 if you're really lucky. If we move into the wild world of 5G, then things get quite fast and exciting. But 4G is typically where we are at the moment. And you can see that if you can upload at 10 megabits per second on a good day, that's really pushing it. Then if you're recording at 100 megabits per second at top quality, then it's going to take you 10 times real time to upload a file to a remote server or into the cloud or something. So just to keep you give you an idea of managing expectations here about what you can do with file upload and so on. Streaming, of course, that's a different kettle of fish. Streaming your data, you're sacrificing quality, you're reducing the bandwidth, you're compressing much more. And you may need somewhere between 2, 4, 6 megabits per second, something of that order, to stream a decent quality picture. If I just pause for just a second, Jake, I can see some questions have come in. A bit more about LTE phone dongles. The phone dongle connections tend to be on the bigger news type style camcorders like the Z280 and the FX9 once it's got the XDCA, the camera adapter on the back of it. So not so much for the Z90. You can use external sort of kits and things like Live View and all that kind of stuff works in that kind of way, but built-in sort of capabilities on different cameras. Nicola, streaming Venice. No, well, let me just think about Venice. Streaming functions, not so much, no. There are external adapters that you can use, and I'll come back to mention one of those later that enables you to feed an SDI connection into something called a CBK WA100 and stream your data, but that's an external dongle sort of thing, nothing internal in the Venice camera. Right. There's lots of complicated stuff in the menus of Sony cameras, access point mode and station mode. I'll come back to that if anyone's interested later. It's probably time to have a bit more look at what streaming is all about. And as I mentioned, file transfer and streaming are different kettles of fish, really. File transfer may take a long time to upload your file to a remote server, even with a fast connection. And the file size when you've finished doing that is the same as it was on the card in the camera. If you're sending the full res or the proxy or whatever the file size was on the camera, all the ones and noughts arrive at your server or whatever it is in the cloud. And there are checks to make sure it all arrives safely. And quality is not compromised. So everything gets there, and everybody takes a great deal of care using the correct protocols in order to make sure that everything arrives safely. Streaming is a little bit different. You're just connecting the live output of the camera to the outside world and chucking out the output of the camera and hoping that somebody can see it and nothing goes wrong. It's all done in real time, of course. There's no time for uploading full res files. You have to manage the data rate so that it can fit down the pipe. And if you miss a packet, then that's too bad, really. If we're doing a file transfer, we can say, oh, stop everybody, can you resend that packet? Because I didn't quite receive that one properly, it got a bit corrupted on the way. Oh, right, we'll stop and resend. Have you got it now? That's great. The live streaming doesn't quite work that way. If you're live streaming a major event and someone doesn't receive one of the packets properly, they can't interrupt the live stream and say, oh, sorry guys, can we all pause there while I get that again, because it needs to be resent, if you don't mind. Everybody stops and waits for it to be resent. That just really wouldn't work in the live streaming environment. So it's all done real time, though there will of course be latency in the system and a delay, as we'll see in a minute with a bit of luck. Excuse me. So there'll be a bit of a delay. So you might look at a couple of seconds, 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds maybe, depending on your connection capabilities. And if the data isn't received, tough, it's too late and you missed it. But it's an important thing to mention that the camera output has to be transcoded for a streaming format. Streaming is, as I mentioned before, packets of data. If you imagine the video output of your camera coming out as like a stream of water out of a hose pipe, if you like, your SDI connection, you can just connect your hose pipe to your monitor, and it will pick up the output at the beginning of a new frame, and off it goes, no problem. If you connect your hose pipe out of your SDI to the internet, it really doesn't know what to do with that. It's expecting packets instead of just a continuous stream of water coming out of your hose pipe. I think this analogy may have gone a bit too far now, but bear with me. Instead of just a continuous stream of water, it expects packets. It expects you to pour that water into jam jars and send all the jam jars the packets of water out where they can then arrive at their final destination and be then decoded. So you can't directly stream from an SDI or an HDMI connector. This has become quite an important question for people with cameras now, because everybody wants to stream or connect to the web with their web user camera as a webcam or whatever. And if your camera only has an SDI or an HDMI connection, you're not going to get there. You're going to need some external capture device in order to convert your continuous stream of hosepipe of SDI ones and noughts into a packetized data stream to go over the net. If you've got an Ethernet connector on your device, then you're in the money. You're in luck. The stream out of an Ethernet connector will always be a packetized, network-friendly data stream. If you've got an if you've got a USB connector, then you've not necessarily got a way through to the net, but you may well have. And if you've got a USB connector, there may be bits of software that would enable you to stream directly from your camera. We'll come back to that later. But basically, with streaming, there will be a compromise in image quality in order to fit down the available bandwidth of your connection, whatever that connection may be. Okay, so most camcorders now have a streaming encoder built into it, and a lot of the PXW series camcorders have something called MPEG-2 transport stream UDP encoders built into them. Or you can use an external encoder, or you can send video to a streaming provider who will do it for you. There is different ways of doing this, and we'll talk about how you do it a bit later on. I just want to mention that there are different protocols for streaming, and you may come across all this alphabetic spaghetti, UDP, TCP, RTMP, RTMPS, all this nonsense, which is here to confuse us. But all these things are different ways of putting your output from your camera into jam jars and then sending it off over the internet. UDP is the most commonly used thing for streaming, and it's called User Datagram Protocol, not that that matters. And there's a famous old joke for IT people here. Do you want to hear a funny UDP joke? Okay, you may not get it, and I won't really care. And that's the joke. I mean, you have to be a kind of an IT person to appreciate that kind of humour. But the basic message here is that when you're transmitting over UDP, you're just bundling up the jam jars, sending them off, and you don't care if anybody gets them or not. Nobody has to sign for them. There's no resending them if they don't arrive on time. They're just bundled out the door and off they go, and we hope that somebody receives them, and if they don't, well, we don't care. But that does mean that you can just keep going, if you like, and that's important to do your streaming in real time. There are new formats coming along, and you'll start to see things like RTMP and RTMPS appearing in your network menu of your camera, real-time messaging protocol, and some of them use TCP, which is the format that it's a bit like signing for the packages once they're arrived, to say, yeah, we received that safely, thank you very much, please send another package. And you have this sort of handshaking to and fro as the jam jars are sent and received and checked in and accounted for. So this RTMP style of transmission, you will start to see in the network menus of your camera more often. And this is the kind of thing that's used by the Z90 and the NX80 for all this YouTube live streaming. And it is the default sort of streaming protocol for YouTube Live. There are, unfortunately, lots of others, MCS, MPEG-, SRT, all this, again, more and more alphabetic spaghetti, but they're all doing the same thing, just different ways of packetizing your jam jars full of data as it comes out of the camera to make it fit down the network. So, who can you send your stream to? First thing I want to have a look at is just sending it to a single recipient. And you've been able to do this for a while with Sony camcorders. You can just send your stream of video to a destination. And that destination you would choose using a IP address. So you tell your streaming server built into the camera to say, I want to send my stream to this address. And it will do that for you. And if you've got something like VLC on your laptop at home or something, then you should be able to decode that stream and view the incoming material on it. So let's have a go at that, shall we? And please excuse me if all this crashes, because there's so much capability for it all falling over here, and it'll be an adventure for us all. So let's go to our Z90 and have a look to start with at the I'll just put myself in picture as well. Just have a look at the network menu, which is this little box with our transmission signal coming off it here. So if we have a look at our network menu, we've got a number of bits and bobs in here. We've got control with smartphone, and I would show you how to just tap my phone and use the simple sort of protocol to connect it to my mobile phone, and it would automatically open Content Browser, and I'll be able to control the camera. But unfortunately, owing to a quirk of the camera, it discombobulates the HDMI output when you do that, so I can't really show it to you. But very easy to do, and you can use the NCS system to just connect to your smartphone to the Content Browser mobile. There's something called RTMP, RTMPS, which we've just been talking about, and that's the bit of the menu you would go to if we were to connect to YouTube Live or Facebook Live. Because as I mentioned, these are the new protocols that enable us to talk to these platforms. You've also got streaming, which is slightly old school streaming. It uses an MPEG-2 transport stream using UDP that we've already talked about. And I'm going to try having a go at that. And I've already put a preset into here. If I have a look at my preset, I can set the size of the image that I want to send, 1280 by 720 or 640 by 360. I'm going to choose high definition here, or high-ish definition. And then I have to choose where I want to send it to. And I've already programmed in to my preset. And you can store several different presets, so you don't have to faff about too much when you're trying to start your streaming. If you've got one or two or maybe three presets already stored, it makes life a lot easier. And the place that I'm going to stream to is called 192.168.1.113, which is the IP address of my laptop. And that's where I'm going to send my stream. And I'm going to tell it to use something called a port number 1234, which is a generally accepted way of communicating streaming data into your camera, into your laptop. It's a bit difficult to describe what a port is doing. I always think of it as almost like a radio receiver tuning to a particular frequency and saying your streaming is most likely to be on this particular frequency. Let's tune into radio streaming, and we're going to use port number 1234. So I'm going to OK that. I'm going to return, and then I'm going to hit execute, and I'm going to select a connection method. I'll come back to the connection method first, because before you do this, you have to establish the connection. And as we've already mentioned, this camera has two ways of doing it: wired LAN via a little dongle thing, an adapter, or via Wi-Fi. And I'm going to use the Wi-Fi mode. I'm cheating a bit here because I've already set up the Wi-Fi connection, hopefully. So, okay, and there we are. Now, it says in our viewfinder here that we are streaming. Well, it says we're ready to stream. What we're actually, what we have to do is we have to press the thumbnail button here to start the stream. And with a bit of luck, when I do that, you'll see the little white transmission icon go live to say that we are now live and streaming. But we haven't done anything at the other end yet. So with a bit of luck, I can, bear with, I can switch over to my laptop and open VLC Media Player. And with a bit of luck, I can tell it to, if I go to the Media tab, I can tell it to open a network stream. And what we're telling it here is that it should look for a UDP stream, and it should be on port number 1234. There are simple setup sort of documents for this sort of thing as well, if you need them on that interweb business. So I won't go into perhaps too much detail. I'll just hit that play button, and oh, there we go. And now if I pan my camera, nudge the camcorder, now you can see hopefully that in a 3 or 4 seconds time the stream hits the VLC player and is available as a source on my laptop. And of course that laptop can be anywhere in the world. The downside is that you can kind of only stream to one destination here, so you're not going to set the world on fire with your influencing capabilities. I think I'm going to be an influencer one day. I don't know quite how you do it. I'm sure there must be an easy way, but I hear it's really good being an influencer, so I'm going to be that. So there we are. We're streaming to our laptop, which is nice. And as you can see, if I pan the camera now, there is a 3-second, 4-second lag on the camcorder, which is what it takes to get over the network and receive the stream. Just while we're here, something I skimmed over was setting the destination for my stream, where I'm going to stream it to. And I very blithely just said, oh, here's the IP address of the laptop. If you go to just the Windows button here and type in CMD for command prompt, you can open up something called a command prompt on your laptop. And I can type in IP config, and somewhere down here it will tell me my IP address, 192.168.1113. So that is the identity of my laptop, and that's what I need to enter into the streaming destination settings of my camcorder. And that works. That's okay. That's fairly simple streaming, but it's to a single destination. Close that down. And go back to my Z90. And I now press the thumbnail button again, stop the stream. And it's sometimes a bit confusing, the streaming start and stop, and I usually forget to turn it off and close the screen on the camcorder, and it carries on streaming for 4 hours without me noticing. So that's a very simple way of streaming. There are other methods. I don't know if you noticed, but there was a Ustream option on the Z90 menus. So if I go back to the streaming menus, streaming, I've got RTMP and RTMPS, which, as we've mentioned, is where we're going to go with the YouTube Live and the Facebook Live. We've got simple old school streaming, as it were, using an MPEG-2 transport stream. The other thing we can do is we can connect to a hosting service. So if we want to get our stream out to a massive audience, that's a bit different. We can stream it just to a single laptop, as we've been doing, which is sometimes pretty useful. We can stream it to Facebook Live or YouTube Live, which will stream it to the entire world if you want. There are downsides to using these platforms, things to do with advertising and who can watch and all that kind of stuff. and security and all that kind of thing. Or you can get somebody else to look after it for you. And one of the options is to connect to Ustream, which is now part of IBM, I believe. And you can sign up there, and they will give you some settings to enter. And you can set your user information and connect to Ustream. And basically, that sends the stream to them, and they pass it on to whoever you want. And there are many different web streaming hosts you could send it to. But the basic principle is your streaming host looks after all the different possible destinations of your stream. Mark has just mentioned in the questions, could you open that stream in OBS and then restream out to multiple destinations? Mark, yes, I believe you can. Jake's probably better at this than me. He's a better, more open broadcast software compliant person than I am. It's all a bit IT for me, but I believe you can then open that stream in OBS and then send it onwards to multiple destinations. So there are different ways of doing it. What Sony have tried to do is to make it simple to YouTube Live, which we'll come to in a minute, and I'll hopefully explain that that is quite simple. Cue a complete disaster and network failure. So
yeah, Neil, with getting it into OBS, you just need to add it as a VLC video source in OBS, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to do. If you just Google like how to just do it, I think a lot of the examples use the FS5. But yeah, if you just Google like FS5 OBS in OBS, I think there's a couple of video guides on it, but it's relatively simple. Yeah.
Yes, I think it is. Thank you. Cheers, Jake. So I just want to have a look at some of the other options in this menu here, just so that you're not too confused by them, hopefully. Network client mode. Sony have some dedicated hardware, a network client server that manages data streams and provides error correction and gives you a very high quality streaming output from the camera. It's more designed for news organizations, people like that who want to have absolute control of the network stream, and they would have a network client's streaming server in their building, which would receive these streams and optimize the quality of them. So unless you've got the add-on box from the Sony Corporation, and you're probably working for a large broadcast organization, that's probably not going to be of interest to you. FTP transfer, file transport protocol, is where you would go to transfer files rather than stream video. So as I mentioned before, you can do that, not a problem, but you just have to tell the camera where to send the files to. And you can preset various destinations. And just like streaming, you have to enter the host name, whether it's a secure protocol, port numbers, and where you would like that file to be stored when it arrives. But once you've set up all that information, you can save it as a preset, and it works. It's fine. It is limited by the speed of the connection. So if you're in South Korea, obviously it takes about 2 seconds to upload 14 hours of Ultra HD video. If you're in the Googleplex, yeah, not a problem. But for the rest of us mere mortals, if you're hanging around waiting for your plane in an airport, although actually there'll probably be no contention on the network now, so you'll get a massive upload speed. I don't know, but for the rest of us trying to use airport Wi-Fi, it's pretty slow. But it works fine. And typical kind of server that you might use, Sony have something called Sony C, spelled CI, which is quite a sophisticated sort of cloud-based server system for people producing network and collaborating online on managing material. So Sony CI. Excuse me. Oh, sorry, I keep not pressing the magic button so you can't see me anymore. That's too much of a tragedy, I imagine. So those are the different options there. So the FTP service, you need to know where you're going to be sending your material to, and you may need a security certificate, a root certificate, if you're using FTPS, which is a secure service. And that's a little bit beyond the capabilities of today and always confuses me, but you can upload a root certificate into your camera that enables you to use secure file transfer over FTP. I don't know if you noticed, there's also an airplane mode. So all that happens then is, you've got the flip out screen on one side, there's another flip out on the other side, and that creates a pair of wings, and your camera can then fly, which is nice, apparently. FTP transfer streaming. Right. Let's have a go at this streaming direct to YouTube. Now, Sony have, believe it or not, created numerous guides, and there are web sort of descriptions of how to do this that are all very good as well. There's a colleague of mine called Alvaro from Spain who does a very good version of this. You can find him on YouTube. But there's also a simple PDF version of which I can hopefully put on my screen. Bear with. Here we go. Lost it. Come back. Here we go. So this simple live streaming quick guide. Again, if you Google this, simple live streaming quick guide, PXWZ90, takes you through the system step by step. And it takes you through 3 stages, basically. Prepare YouTube Live, configure the camcorder, and start streaming. What could be simpler? There's a couple of items that it maybe has missed out at the beginning of this before you start. And before you start down this path, 2 things just that might catch you out. One, that you need version 2 software or higher of the camcorder in order to do this. And the other one that catches people out is that the camcorder record mode needs to be in an HD format rather than in an Ultra HD. So not 2160 flavor UHD. It needs to be good old-fashioned 1920 by 1080. Which is important to remember, because a lot of people just get stuck because they're in the wrong record format. So you go into YouTube Live, create a new stream, set your settings, and it will generate a stream key and a streaming destination for you, which you then have to load into the camera to tell the camera where to stream to. This is the, if you like, the most difficult bit. Sorry, I'll just make this a bit bigger for you. Sorry. Because you can copy the stream key, but you can't paste it into your camcorder very easily. And it's a bit of a nuisance because you get some enormously long convoluted string of numbers and letters. And if any of you have used the character generator on Sony cameras, you know what kind of horrible surprise you're in for. Fortunately, something I didn't notice until way too late was, of course, that the camcorder has a touchscreen, so you can just tap the numbers 1, 2, 3, and so on, and it's a bit quicker than using the little joystick to weave your way around the menus to enter these characters. But you then have to enter in your stream name, which we'll do in a minute, and your streaming URL, your destination, into the camcorder, so it knows where to send the stream. And then we have to make sure our camcorder has access to the internet. It has a network connection, which you do via the Wi-Fi connection. Enter in the destination set and press the button, and hopefully we can start streaming. So this step-by-step guide would be your go-to piece of paper. I do like an old-fashioned piece of paper. It's all very well having this video on the internet. It'll never catch on. And that's a useful quick guide to the setup system. So I'll put that back on my other screen. If you'll excuse me a second. Okay, and we'll have a go at this Facebook Live business. So if I go back to my Z90, and I'm going to go down this RTMPS business and give it a go. And I've already set a preset because you don't want to see me fumbling my way through the menus trying to enter a long convoluted password. Life, believe me, is too short for that. So I've already put in a preset, and you can change your preset, but here it is. And as usual, it's, as I mentioned before, it's got the URL that I've pasted from YouTube and the stream name built into my camcorder. Now, I ought to therefore show you where to find that information on YouTube. So if I go to, here we go, just going to close my presentation just for a minute, so that I can put a browser onto the web, onto my desktop here, and I'm going to go to YouTube Live, and on the YouTube Live page there's a little camera up in the top right hand corner here, me up as well, and if I hit that button there are two options: to upload video or to go live. Now, believe it or not, I want to go live. That's what we're talking about today. And if I hit that button, I can either create a new stream, or I'm going to reuse the last settings because I'm just demonstrating it. But I'll show you what you would do if you were creating a new stream. So I'm going to reuse the existing settings. If we were creating a new stream, we just hit this button and create a new stream. We call it a name, whatever that may be, Z90 or Neil Stream or exciting event that you must not miss or whatever. And you can list it as being publicly available or unlisted, or invite people in particular. You can give it a category where it's what sort of thing it's about. Science and technology I've chosen. And this is not made for kids, but there's no age restriction because there's nothing horrible about it. And I'm going to create it. And that is where it will give me my stream key, which if I press this button, it will show everybody in the world what my stream key is. But I would copy that and paste it if I could, but I have to just press the button, write it down and enter it into the camcorder. Equally, I have to write this down into the camcorder on the settings we've just seen. And if I go back to my Z90, I will execute my YouTube settings, connect via Wi-Fi. Please hold, your call is important to us. Okay, so this is the streaming output of the Z90 camcorder, and once again we're not actually live streaming yet. We've got streaming up, but we're not transmitting until I press the thumbnail button. And with a bit of luck, if I go back to my presentation at some stage in the not too distant future, I'm hoping that arrives. And there we go. Whoa, how exciting is that? So my stream from my Z90 camcorder has now arrived at the camcorder. And I'll show you the delay on it. If I move the camcorder now, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 6 or 7 seconds delay until it gets to my YouTube account. So I've managed to get as far as YouTube, but I haven't gone out to the outside world yet because I haven't pressed the button to go live yet. So I've made it to the YouTube server, but before I go out to the real world, I'm going to share it with my feed with all sorts of people, and you get the usual options to share it with everybody in the world. I'm not going to share mine with anybody because I don't like anybody watching. I've subscribers 0 so far, and I intended to keep it that way. So I'm just going to copy that link there. I'm then going to go live. Okay, we're live from our exciting output of the camera. If I open another window and simply paste that link into there, there we are. We're on YouTube. The excitement never ends. And if we once again look at the delay, if I move the camera now, a little bit less actually delay for the actual live stream because it's not coming back again from the YouTube servers sort of thing. So it's getting there. It's working. So we are live to the entire world. Not that the entire world is remotely interested, but in theory, we could all watch that exciting live stream of my friend the Puffin there. Yes, so that's how it works. Yeah, simple as that, really. I say simple as that. I was very nervous that it would all crash and fail because that's what normally happens when you try to demonstrate these kind of things, but it did seem to work, which is good. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my presentation, if you'll bear with me a second. There we go. So we can stream to all sorts of different platforms then. A single recipient running VLC or something like that using ordinary streaming service such as Ustream. We've done YouTube Live. Facebook Live is pretty much the same, really. I did put some Facebook Live settings here. Facebook Live, you press create new post, live video, the get started button, use a persistent stream key so your stream key stays the same. And I hesitate to use the word intuitive, but it actually is, and pretty straightforward. I'm not a Facebook person myself, so I'm not so into the into this kind of newfangled technology, but it does seem to work just as well as the YouTube Live does. Yeah, so that's about it for the streaming bit. Couple of final bits I want to mention. One is just I had a problem the other week because there's no webcams left in the entire world. They've all been hoovered up, and I needed to buy a webcam. There weren't any. You can actually use various Sony cameras as webcams. Of course, if you've just got an SDI or an HDI output on them, you need some kind of capture card to connect them to. And of course, all the capture cards are sold out as well. I'm sure CVP will sort you out. They've got everything. Thousands of everything at a very reasonable price. But there was a bit of a shortage. But if you do want to use something like a A7, A9, A6000, some of the A5000 cameras, you can do so. They do actually have a USB connector on them. As I mentioned right at the beginning, if you're the connection side of things, if you've got an SDI or HDMI and that's all you've got, then you need a capture device, some kind of hardware thingamajig, and you have to go and find one. If you've got a USB connector, there is a chance that the camera manufacturer makes some software that will do sort of software encoding for you. And Sony has a package called Edge Remote, and that Edge Remote application can then feed into OBS, Open Broadcast Software, and it can convert your feed from the USB connector of all these cameras, very nice cameras, so it's a good quality feed, without using a capture card. So you take the USB connection into your ordinary computer without a capture card, use the Edge Remote application, then into OBS, and Bob's your uncle. No extra hardware required. Now, I was halfway producing a guide to this, thinking myself really clever and whatnot, when, of course, you then have a bit of a search down the internet and find that someone has already done it. So credit where it's due to Mr. Chris Watkins and his media. There's a link there to his YouTube channel where he explains quite clearly and quite nicely, I think, how you would do that. And it's very straightforward. Nobody really tells you that Sony make this imaging edge software, but maybe if you're in the stills market, you're more aware of it. But from the video side, I wasn't particularly aware of it. And there's a list of supported devices, which you can Google supported devices for edge remote. You'll find it. And it'll help you through if you haven't got any hardware just at the moment. Final thing I need to mention. If you want to do a full live event into the cloud, then Sony have something called a virtual production system, kind of like a virtual switcher that sits in the cloud, basically. And you can connect your Z90 to it, or your NX80, or your FX9, or various other camcorders, your Z280, and it will stream material to your cloud-based switcher. So when I first saw this, I thought, oh, well, that's something that vMix can do with, but of course you don't need a laptop to connect the cameras together. They don't need hardware connections into a laptop. All these cameras can be at different locations across the world, all connecting via Wi-Fi to the cloud. And you can be sitting on your yacht in the Bahamas. You do all have a yacht in the Bahamas, I assume, with your iPad or whatever it is, your smart device running the application on it, doing all your cloud-based switching and connecting live to YouTube or Facebook or wherever you want, basically. Now, this is a paid-for service. However, Sony are offering 20 hours of free broadcast time on it just to try and capture people and ensnare them into the grips of the Sony Corporation. And that offers you 20 free hours of switcher over a 30-day period. And it's free for those 30 days. And that is probably worth a go, actually. It's quite an interesting solution. So if you Google Sony Virtual Production, you'll find it. I don't know why that there's a little widgety thing here that I've left. What have I done now? Sorry, user error. Called the CVKWA 100 that has a BNC connector on it, so that if you've got another BNC source, you can connect into it from there. So if you have a PTZ camera from another manufacturer, even, God forbid, or a submix from a little SDI mixer or something, you could then plug it into the CVKWA 100, and that will upload to via the net to your destination. Good. I think we're about there. I'll just have a look at questions as they come in. Can you record 4K while streaming? Sorry, no, you can't, because for the streaming mode you need to be in HD rather than UHD. So you can't record while streaming, which is just a limitation of this particular camcorder. Sorry, can you FTP to Dropbox? I should think you can, actually, but never tried it. The only one I've actually used successfully is the Sony C system, and it took me ages to figure out the settings for that. But now Sony C are on top of it, and well, you would hope they would be being a Sony server. But I must admit, I've not seen the settings to Dropbox, but I can't see why it wouldn't work. Can you stream past the stream to a live view recipient, or does this specifically need a live view unit on the camera end? Can Ustream do it, or do you mean streaming generally? Not sure, actually, Christopher. I shall try and check for you and come back to the common room later to have a look at that, if you don't mind. What's the dongle for the S5 and FS7 Mark II? There's a couple of dongles. There's an SDI dongle that just takes the SDI output and streams it direct. That's called a CBK-WA100, which is on the screen at the moment. There's also a little Wi-Fi dongle that it comes in the box with those with the FS7 Mark II, little USB dongle that plugs into the top of the camcorder and gives you a Wi-Fi connection. And for the FS5, the Wi-Fi is already built in, as I recall. Can you use the SDI or HDMI output while simultaneously streaming and recording internally? No, you can't, I'm afraid. Limitation of the Z90, when you start recording, your HDMI output disappears, which is a quirk of the Z90, so you can't do that. What cameras have the RTMP? At the moment, I think it's just the NX80 and the Z90, but I think it's coming on future software upgrades on other cameras that will give you this sort of simple live streaming to YouTube feature. It's definitely available via the. I think it's available via the FX9 now as well. Gosh, I can't remember. Again, I'll come back and drop a note into the comment room of exactly which cameras do that for you. Okay, what are we doing time-wise? 3 o'clock. Yeah, I think that'll do for now. Hopefully that's been of value to people. And as I say, if there are any more questions, if you can just chuck them into the CVP comment room, and I'll have a rummage around and come back later on and try and answer some of them for you.
Awesome. Yeah, if anyone has any other questions on YouTube as well, once the stream's over, just pop them in there, and we'll get them answered for you. Good.
Okay, well, thank you very much for hosting it, Jake. And I'll see you again at some time. I think I'm doing some on camera matching and colorimetry and HDR and other bits and bobs in the future. So
yeah, there's a whole series. So yeah, if you head over onto our events page, you'll see the full listing here. But in terms of the YouTube streams, I've kept it limited on the YouTube, not to spam everyone with the many events that we've got coming up. So yeah, if you want any, want to catch any of other Neil's other streams coming up, yeah, just head over to the events page and the links will be on there.
Yeah, and I'll see if I can maintain my 0 subscribers to my YouTube channel, which I'm very proud of. We influencers, we're taking the internet by storm.
Awesome. Thank you, Neil. Okay. Good, dude. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jake.
Thanks
everybody.